Hello, this is, of course, Rudy Giuliani, and this is part of his podcast, I think, from Common Sense. We'll give you the source of this, but obviously, um, there's no crimes and he should be acquitted on that, but the motions were needed to be made today, and they weren't. So we're going to record a little bit of this.
And see that something similar to this happened to us in the late 1940s and the 1950s. And this book that's recently been written by David A. Nicholas, Ike and McCarthy, gives you a good, very readable description of a man named Joseph R. McCarthy, who was the Adam Schiff of his day. We could have, after you read it, an interesting debate. Who was worse, McCarthy or Schiff? It's not easy to decide who. Schiff conducted secret proceedings. Schiff demonstrably lied in ways that obstructed the investigation. Schiff gave contrary answers to his involvement with this whistleblower, who he insists remain anonymous, making very serious charges. We don't have to go into all of the different things that Schiff did because a lot of the others of them, Pelosi and Nadler, have equally been abusive. But the point is that in that period when that happened, we were together enough as a country so that notice the title, Ike and McCarthy. McCarthy was a Republican senator from the state of Wisconsin. Eisenhower was a Republican president who won the state of Wisconsin with McCarthy's support. McCarthy, unlike Schiff, was a popular political figure with an over 50% approval rating. But the head of his party had the courage to discipline him because he was violating the rights of the people. Because to Dwight David Eisenhower, American rights, protection of the American people, is much more important than political party. Things have gone so far here that hatred of Donald Trump has completely obscured love of country, which is why we end up with a charge like obstruction of Congress. Doesn't exist. There is no charge. Congress has no power to impeach. I give, just to conclude this part of it, a silly example. Suppose Donald Trump was impeached by a majority Democrat vote of the House of Representatives for being late for 4 press conferences in a row. You say, well, that's silly. Well, it's not silly if Congress can make up what it impeaches for and is.
That's the point. If they can make up what they impeach for, and that's exactly what they did in that area.
Not constrained by, once again, treason, bribery, high crimes, misdemeanors. Being late for press conferences is none of those 4 things, nor is obstruction of Congress, nor is abuse of power. So what should be done? Well, there are 2 avenues, and I've written on this. One avenue is to go before the court and argue that the president's constitutional rights are being violated. The court would say, initially, this is a political question. We should stay out of it. We are not given that power. But the court wasn't given the power to declare acts of Congress unconstitutional. In Marbury against Madison, our great Chief Justice Marshall created judicial review as an obvious, necessary conclusion from the Constitution, because there had to be some arbiter when there were 2 conflicting interpretations of the Constitution that the 2 different branches of government, the executive and the legislature, stood firmly behind, and there couldn't be agreement.
So the courts had to be some arbiter, and this makes perfect sense. And it's already been set up as a precedent through Justice Marshall.
government did, the federal government did, and the states disagreed. Justice Marshall reasoned that by being the chief law agency of the United States, that the high court had that power. Well, here we have the same thing. We have a diametrically opposed executive and a partisan Congress ruled by just Democrats expressing just their will. And we have a constitutional crisis. And the court, of course, is created for that purpose.
Now, again, this is a constitutional crisis. And again, the Supreme Court now is created to go between and arbitrate between the states and the federal government, which they do all the time, and also between the separate forms of government, administrative, presidential, the executive, and the Congress, House of Congress, or the Senate. But the time to do that was actually today, and I don't think it was, which is unfortunate because it's going to prolong this needless impeachment trial. It is a legal impeachment trial.
But that would take a long time. The outcome is debatable because it is a case of what we call first impression. And there's another remedy, and that remedy comes from the rules of criminal procedure. The Constitution says that the Chief Justice presides. It says nothing else. It doesn't say how he presides. But you have to assume in presiding that he would set down a set of rules so that it isn't a circus like the Schiff thing was. And the rules that normally are used are the federal rules of criminal procedure. So let's assume that this was an indictment, which is what the Chief Justice would be familiar with and what the federal rules of criminal procedure are all about. If an indictment is...
So criminal law and indictments, if you don't really break the law, you can state so and stop it. And then the judge has to decide one or two ways that he's going to rule on this.
...is brought, before the trial begins, the defense must challenge the indictment for failing to state a crime. If the defense neglects to do it, it loses that argument forever.
Again, that's a very important point. If the defense doesn't do this, they lose the potential to do that. Now, President's legal team is a defense, and they should have brought that up today. I don't think they did. I don't know why, but I don't think they did.
It's a mandatory motion that must be made. What it says is, yes, the government went about the work of getting an indictment and getting a grand jury to vote for it, but when you look at the final indictment and you read it, it does not charge a crime. It fails to list the necessary elements of fraud or bribery or drug dealing. And what happens is a motion under, don't want to get too technical, under Rule 12 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure is made, and the judge decides at that point, if that is the case, to dismiss it. He can dismiss it with or without prejudice. With prejudice means you can't bring it again. Without prejudice means you can fix it. Well, what should happen in the Senate is, after the Democrats get a chance to present their entirely partisan picture of what they did, of their articles of impeachment that charge no impeachable offense, and the Republicans respond in their opening statement as to why this didn't happen and why this is totally unjustified. There should be a vote. A motion should be made to dismiss the articles of impeachment for failure to state an impeachable offense.
As simple as that. And I don't believe that was done today. It should have been done after their opening statement. Maybe it will be done tomorrow. Monday. We will see.
Similar to dismiss an indictment for failure to state a crime. I believe that that is the correct outcome. And it's the correct outcome because many arguments could be made for why it would be good for one side or the other to have a big, long trial. I could see as a lawyer for the president and as a supporter of the president how that would reveal facts that you don't know about the vast corruption of not just Joe Biden, but of the Democrat Party in Ukraine. It was like their breeding ground for corruption, and for some time. Despite the fact that there's some appeal to that, I stand back from it and I think of history. And what I think about is we've got to close the book on this way of doing things. In other words, we've got to go back to you can only impeach for the reasons why the Constitution allows you to impeach. We have got to go back to what Hamilton wanted, that impeachment is rare, very rare, because it is so jarring, because it negates what our country is all about, election by the people, not by the political potentates. And
so this is important. I'm going to leave it here, give you the link to this, but it is essential for us to go back and do what is constitutionally required of us and criminally and legally required of us, and it needs to be joined. And this motion should be made Monday. If it's not, it'll be unfortunate, but it should be made by the defensive team, Trump's defensive team, this coming week. Maybe they'll spend a day or two on this, but it needs to be done, and it needs to be closed. The store needs to be closed. We'll see if they get that done in a day or two on Monday or Tuesday. Good day. This is Roger Martin from Billings, Montana. This is part of Common Sense by Rudy Giuliani, and it's part of his podcast. Good day.